Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Attah's expected statement to Parliament on plans to deal with COVID-19 has been postponed because the President will address the nation tonight. Joining me from Parliament is our correspondent, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, with more on that. Joseph, so the President's speech has forced the Finance Minister to postpone his address? All right, obviously we don't have the connection to Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, but we expected to hear the Finance Minister speak of some stimulus for small and medium-sized enterprises and for the business community in general. But let me bring in Philip Namfuri. He's our Finance Minister at the moment. No, because I was talking about the fact that we're expecting some stimulus package for businesses as we go through this crisis, and we're expecting the Finance Minister to lay or draw out a plan somewhat. If you were in his shoes, what would you be thinking?
I'm thinking about how to ensure there's sustainability in the economy post COVID-19. How do we weather the storm to ensure that we come out of this with some sort of normalcy in our economy? You know, we've come from, some argued, a point where the economy was in its low, particularly on the back of the weak commodity prices from about 2012, 2016. So we've come from that, we've made some progress. Then we had the banking sector issues also feed into it. We've recorded good growth in that. If you look at the broad macro numbers, we've been doing well. Now all of a sudden we've been hit by this. We're a commodity dependent country.
Right.
And commodity dependent in terms of we export this for foreign exchange, and our economy is largely based on this. Oil just came on board 2010 and we've been doing some inroads there. So all of a sudden we have prices crashing across the globe. We have uncertainty, cut in trade, tourism, etc. is going to affect us, and he has to come and speak about how that's going to help us.
Let's try one more time to see if we can get in touch with Joseph Opoku-Gakpo. Hopefully you can hear me, Gakpo. Can you hear me?
Yes, the indication is that the Minister for Finance, Ken Ofori-Attah, was expected in Parliament earlier today. From the indication that we're getting, he wasn't exactly coming around to lay any documents when it comes to the stimulus package or any such thing. The indication we're getting is that his presence in the House was to come inform members of Parliament and update them on the processes that are ongoing to raise finances in order to help cushion the economy, even in the light of the COVID-19 spread. And you recall that he did that about a little over a week ago when he appeared before the House and updated MPs. Now, what the majority leader, Osei Mensah, who has been telling Parliament is that later tonight, President Akufo-Addo will be delivering an address to the nation as far as the issues of COVID-19 are concerned. Now, he says that when the president speaks and it requires that anything that the president announces would require some form of legislation or parliamentary approval, it's only then that we can expect the finance minister to then appear before the House and go ahead with those to allow for those, because the House is going on a break next week, Saturday. So he did put that particular caveat that it's only when something the president says about the economy requires some form of parliamentary approval or something of that sort that will see the finance minister event hearing before MPs.
All right, I'm going to try, hopefully you can hear me on this one. So currently there's a debate about lockdown, and there's talk about the possible implications on the economy. Where do parliamentarians stand when it comes to the issue of a lockdown?
That is something that no indication has been given here in Parliament. The minority spokesperson on foreign affairs, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, requested that the House make space to debate the issue of lockdown and the possible impact it would have on the economy and how ordinary people can be cushioned in the light of that. But the majority insisted that that's still a conversation that's ongoing to allow for the House to properly debate such an issue and even getting the other ministers to come respond to questions. So it's not come up on the floor yet. The House is now discussing what form any such conversation on the floor of Parliament should take.
And is there any idea what the president is going to address the nation on tonight? Anybody saying anything over there?
The majority leader did not give any hints or any indication as far as what the content of that particular address would be. But the indication is that he will be giving various updates on what the figures look like. He will most likely be talking about what the package will be like in terms of what businesses and other entities can expect, which is how come it gets some members of parliament to draw a conclusion that definitely the finance minister would have to appear before the House, to the extent that those on the majority side, the minority side say, if even it's tomorrow, that the finance minister would have to be back, they are ready to get him in.
Thank you very much indeed, parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku-Gakpo. So now we know what the finance minister was going to do. Tell Parliament how they are planning to cushion businesses.
Yeah, so Daryl, like I was saying before, you had a discussion with Joseph. So you realize that there's an array of measures governments must take. There's the fiscal side, which I come to see from the finance minister. We've already had the monetary side, which came from the Bank of Ghana. And that's essentially the two main things that are supposed to propel us in these times of COVID-19. So I took the IMF's tracker of countries when it comes to how they are dealing with COVID-19. I took 5 economies, Algeria, Angola, Botswana, Ghana, and Nigeria. I had to put us in there and to see how things go. So I want us to start with Algeria and see how they are managing it from a fiscal perspective and monetary perspective, per what the IMF has put together. So let's start off with the Algeria one. That one looks at how exactly Algeria is dealing with this. There's the fiscal part, and there's the monetary part. And it will interest you to know that most of these economies have cut their monetary policy rates. That's coming from the monetary side to provide some stimulus for the economy. Then
there you go. So we can
for the
see
Algeria,
what Algeria is doing.
So they are going to lower their current spending by 30%. So they're going to cut back, and they're going to pass a supplementary finance law. The law will notably include compensation measures for losses incurred by businesses. So you see some stimulus in there. And you know, Algeria has had a large or high number of cases. So they will need this kind of cushion in the economy. I wonder what is really going on the ground there. Let's roll on to the next one that looks at some things within the monetary and macro financial. And the Bank of Algeria lowered the reserve requirement ratio from 10% to 8%, and its main policy rate by 25 basis points. So you see a policy rate cut in there. Now let's look at the exchange rate dynamics of Algeria also. The authorities announced several measures to cut the imports bill by at least $10 billion. So you see more or less a 3-pronged approach: fiscal, monetary, exchange rate. Now let's go on to Angola, one of the biggest economies in Africa because of their oil exports. And Algeria has also Angola has also made some strides there. The government is working on a package of measures to fight the coronavirus outbreak in the country and its economic fallout. I want us to skip Angola and go to Botswana. I hope I got the pronunciation right. Botswana. Let's also look at what Botswana has to do. Yeah. So in the first line, Botswana has not reported any case as at March 24th. I did a quick check. I didn't find any case yet. Things can change with this virus, but you can look in there that their initial budget allocated to deal with this outbreak was 31 million, that's their currency, of which 22 million has already been spent. The authorities are updating this plan and anticipate increased spending to around 500 million. That's 1/4% of GDP. So you see, across these 3 countries I've just mentioned, nothing really differs. But you realize that the bigger the economy, Algeria obviously has a substantially larger economy, more room to do things. Look at what's happening with Botswana. No monetary and macro financial measures yet. If they record a case, that may change. Okay, let's move on to Ghana and see what we've done. We've discussed it, but let's see how the IMF has captured Ghana's handling of COVID-19 with regards to our fiscal, monetary, and exchange rates. So here, government of Ghana, government committed $100 million to support preparedness and response. Additional funds have been earmarked to address availability of test kits, pharmaceuticals, equipment, and bed capacity. I want us to skip Ghana because we've discussed it a lot. We look at the monetary measures also. We know the Bank of Ghana has cut its monetary policy rate. Minimum reserve requirement ratio has been cut, provide more liquidity. I discussed with Alassane Adani at length yesterday. Let's go on to the Nigerian example. For me, that's very important. Very big economy. And first thing you notice there, 2.7 million has been released to Nigeria's Center for Disease Control. So you see in there that their first push was to channel money to the health sector. And if you discuss with a lot of experts, they think the first place we should look at is the health sector. They've also delayed non-essential capital by spending by about 1% of GDP. That's 1.5 trillion naira. One thing we should note about the Nigerian example is that their economy is heavily hinged on the oil industry. they have about 90% of their foreign exchange earnings coming from oil and 80% of their incomes coming from the oil industry. So if oil prices are in the doldrums, that's done for Nigeria. But look at what's happening with their fiscal also. Import duty waivers for pharmaceutical firms will be introduced. Regulated fuel prices have been reduced and an automatic fuel price formula introduced to ensure fuel subsidies are eliminated. Ghana has largely done away with that. But because of their dependence on oil, they still have this reduction in subsidies or subsidies for their people. On the monetary side, Central Bank of Nigeria maintains this current monetary policy rate and is doing some targeted credit facilities. When the slides roll on, you realize that they are looking at certain key sectors also. And liquidity injection of 2.4% of GDP into the banking system, 100 billion naira to support the health sector, and 2 trillion to the manufacturing sector. So I think for the Ghana example, we need some definitions in there. How much is going where? And I'm sure in the coming days, we should see, if not the president doing this, then the finance minister.
Because my last question to you was going to be if we are on track with the kind of responses from the finance ministry or from government to COVID-19.
I think largely on the health side, I'm not a health expert, so I'll leave that. But I think broadly speaking, there's still some fear when we record cases. But I think authorities are doing their best to handle it. From the monetary side, we've seen what Bank of Ghana has done. Bank of Ghana has hinted that they may have emergency monetary policy committee meetings if they think the crisis needs more push. But we need to see more from the fiscal side. What exactly are we doing? How much is there, and which industries are we targeting? We've seen our sisters in Nigeria do it, so Ghana can do it.
Philip Namfori, thank you very much indeed. Yeah. He didn't want me to say this.
No. I'm not going to allow you.
But I'll do it. This is the last time you're going to see Philip here as a colleague on the Joy Business desk doing analysis. Doesn't mean that you don't hear him or see him on any of the Joy Business platforms. But it's been great working with you.
Yeah, it has.
And
fantastic guy.
It's been a good run, I should say. So all the best. Thank you very much indeed.